Hello, everybody. I'm Ramon Mejia. I'm here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and author interviews on the LitRPG podcast. This is episode number 177 of the show. We're getting quite long. We're getting close to that 200 mark. Had to start thinking of some special prizes and episodes for episode 200 when it comes up. But this week I have 5 new LitRPG reviews just for you folks at home. And that's going to include Awaken Online Unity. Then also after that will be Star Force, LitRPG, which is the 64th book in that series. Then it'll be Lord of Creation, The Universal Struggle, book number 1. And then The Crafter, book number 1, Legacy. And last but not least, of course, will be Kingdom Come, a LitRPG Dragonrider adventure. The Archemi Online Chronicles, book number 3, which wins our longest title of the episode award. Before we get into any of that, of course, we're going to go into LitRPG news. And in LitRPG news, we're just going to begin with a quick mention here. In personal news, I finally finished writing and editing the second book in the Project Alpha series. I think it's a great story. It expands on the real-life RPG setting established in Book 1. There's good action, adventure, dungeon dives with a variety of themes. I think it's the thing I like writing the best about this particular series. It's just like the fun dungeons I can kind of combine. I can do spooky horror stuff with fantasy or action or sci-fi or fantasy, whatever I want to do. And it's on the same book. I like that. Neat RPG powers, of course. Great character development thanks to my editors. I'm actually trying to pre-order thing this time. So I have a release date of July the 1st. So fans of the Ramon Mejia stuff, this book is going to be out on July the 1st. But in addition to that, I wanted to also do some promotional stuff to see if that matters. I couldn't do a Kindle Canon deal. I recently changed the price on book 1. So instead, I'll be giving it away for free. That's right. For free. Free. But it'll be from June the 27th to July the 1st when the book will be free. So feel free to go grab book number 1 in the series if you haven't had a chance to read it, and then pick up book 2, please. Also on July the 1st at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I'll actually be doing a live stream on the Ramon Mejia Facebook page and giving away audiobook codes for a project off of book number 1 and doing a Q&A and all kinds of fun, neat stuff there. So there you go. Link in the show notes for all those things, including links to the books, the Facebook page for Ramon Mejia, which is the name I write under. So there we go. In other LitRPG news, though, yes, there is more. Not too much more, though. Lavelle of LitRPG Reroll has a new review video, this time of The Path of the Necromancer by Dick Davis, which is probably one of his more popular series. He actually wrote multiple books in that series, so good for him. But you can hear Lavelle's views and review on that at the link in the show notes on his YouTube page, so definitely go check that out. Not much else in LitRPG news this week, so there you go. On to stuff that is out now. I haven't read it. It is out now, though, including Shift, book number 2. Also, The Crafter's Dungeon, a Dungeon Core novel. That is out as well. Eldritch Knight, a post-apocalyptic gamelit adventure. The Dark Herefat Saga, book number 1, is out as a novel, as is Future Mage. Also, Merchant of Death, which is from Jared Mandani, who's done some other LitRPG titles that have been a little hit or miss. But this one's is potentially interesting. We don't a lot of merchant stories. Also not is a collection of the Goddess of LitRPG Adventure from Michael Anderle, who is a right-to-market author who seems to be turning his attention towards LitRPG. So he has a bunch of fans. We'll see how this actually turns out, though. In the LitRPG audiobooks, we have some new releases as well, including Star Exile Singularity. Also, Level Up the Knockout, book number 1, which is that side series in the Level Up universe, written though by Max Lagno and Dan Sugaloff. Also out as an audiobook is Alpha Test and Gormania, book number 1. Remember, this is the book where the author passed shortly after writing the book. His estate and his wife essentially went out and did an audiobook for it. So good for them. Produced by Podium Publishing, of course. But this is probably the only book you're going to get in the series, so sorry. Also out as an audiobook, that was Dungeon World Book Number 2, a Dungeon Core Experience, and the 7th book in the Alpha World series, Dark Hands. So all those books are out for all of you folks. Audiobooks for everybody. Okay, in upcoming LitRPG, this is where I read off a bunch of stuff that I know is coming out in the near future. 8-Bit Bastards level 2. The last release date that the author gave me was June 28th, 2019. That might have shifted a little bit. This isn't an unofficial pre-order. The author just said that's when he had planned to have it out, but things change. So if it doesn't come out exactly then, don't get mad at me or the author. He does plan to have it out this soon. Also supposed to be out this month. According to Blaze Corvin, who's actually his public company is publishing it, is Ball of Light Evolution. I'm curious to see if that actually comes out in June or if it's pushed back to July. Again, this is authors say. On July 1st, there is a pre-order for this. Project Alpha Book Number 2, written by me, Ramon Mejia. That is out as a pre-order for July the 1st. Also out for the pre-order is July the 2nd, Nora Hazard, Book Number 3, Accounts Payable. So after you finish reading my book, you can go read Blaze's book. I'm looking forward to reading the 3rd book in the Nora Hazard series personally. Apparently it's supposed to be ending that series. And I'm kind of curious to see how that finishes off, because I think it's the first series that Blaze Corvin has actually finished. He's not done with the character. I think he plans to meld it in with the Delvers LOC universe. And with that group there, he was just waiting to write that one because he needed to finish this one first. So I'm curious to see how eventually they're going to mush and mix. But this is, again, a finished arc for the author there. But yeah, on July 2nd, of course. July the 15th, it'll be the sequel to The Goblin King by R.R. Rudy called The Beast Queen. So there you go. Also out on July 18th, it'll be The Time Master, Interworld Network Book Number 1. July 23rd, it'll be Cannibal Demon of the Mind. On July the 21st, Quest for Vengeance, a LitRPG Saga, Hero Online Book Number 1. For some reason, I feel like I've seen this cover art somewhere else before, if it's not for this story. I just can't remember when. Maybe the author shifted pre-order or changed the release date. I don't remember, but this one looks really familiar. I just can't place it. New to the list of upcoming stuff is Sky Realms Online, Greyhold, a LitRPG adventure, July 30th, 2019. This one seems curious. Just reading the description and some of the authors of their works, I'm like, oh, this seems like it's interesting. I'll have to see if it's actually going to be LitRPG, but give everyone the benefit of the doubt to read their stuff. On July 31st, it'll be Imprisoned Online, Gaming the System. On August 5th, it'll be Hero Go, Champion is Playing, Book Number 3. August the 8th, it'll be Invasion, Book Number 1, A Second Chance. This is the next series from Vasily Mihenko in his Barleona series, which is the, I always call it the Way the Shaman series. It's the Way the Shaman universe. This is a new series from the author with a different main character. He's trying to essentially recapture that same kind of vibe of a restarting character. This one's supposed to be a little more aggressive, I guess. But I'm looking forward to getting a chance to check it out. On August the 12th will be Dungeons of the Crooked Mountain, Underdog, Book Number 1. On August the 15th, it'll be a new series from Eric Uglin, who writes the Good Guy series, which I'm a big fan of, called The Bad Guy book series. I know, it's in the same universe, I think, but it's called Scamps and Scandrels. On August 31st, it'll be Zones of Lacria. On sometime in August, it'll be First Song, Book Number 2 by Blaze Corvin and Asman Foster. September 2nd, The Game of Villains, World of Karik, Book Number 1. September 9th, Blood of Fate, World 99, Book Number 1 by Dan Sergilanoff, who is the author of the other series you mentioned, Level Up and Discardium. Okay, on to the reviews for the week, on to new releases and reviews. And up next we have Awaken Online Unity. This is a side quest novel for the character Frank. Here's the authors. Actually, it's going to be 351 pages, $3.99, available on Kindle Limited, and here's the author's description of the story. A side quest adventure in the best-selling world of Awaken Online. In the aftermath of Thorn's attack on the Twilight Throne, Frank is in an awkward position. Jason and Riley have outpaced him, and everyone is hard at work rebuilding the Twilight Throne, establishing new towns and trying to get their fledgling manufacturing operation off the ground. Everyone except Frank. who finds himself with no immediate task or goal. So Frank decides to strike off on his own. He sets his eyes on the north, heading towards the snow-capped mountains that loom over the Undead Kingdom's border in the hope of improving his shape-shifting abilities. He soon stumbles into an unexpected adventure, a journey that may unearth the secrets behind his class and finally force him to reach his true potential. And I think that kind of honestly undersells this novel. There's a lot more to it, but that's vague enough that it'll keep you interested. This is a side quest story for Frank, who you may or may not remember from the main Awaken Online team. He's been underdeveloped in the main series, which is why I was really glad to see this particular side story. I think it really does a good job of highlighting that lack. It fills in that gap of what he is in the main series versus what he is here, where he's the main character. I actually really enjoyed learning the main character, Frank's backstory, his own personal problems, how he's a character in his own right. And I think this is probably my favorite of the side series for these characters, to be honest. One, because it's just an interesting character power set, and he has some interesting emotional problems. They're not physical. They're not, it's not super terrible, but they're also super relatable. So I enjoyed it as well. And it follows the AO format. Good early character development, set up of problems, and a very actiony last like 30% of the story where everything's resolved very nicely. And again, of the AO side story series, this is probably one of my favorites so far. So for me, I had a good time. I think it's a score of 7.6 out of 10. But the author doesn't really need my kudos. He's doing super amazing on sales. I think he's still in the top 300, like more than almost 2 weeks after his initial release. So he's doing just fine. But for me, I had a good time with this title. Score of 7.6 out of 10. Awaken Online Unity. There you go. And next we have Star Force LitRPG, Star Force Universe book number 64, written by Archemi. That's what it says. This one is not really going to get a big novel description. It's 90 pages, $2.99 for the price point. It is available in Unlimited, but I'm just going to go right into it. This is not LitRPG. It's in any way, shape, or form. This feels like a weird marketing scam or scheme, if you prefer, where the author is trying to get views of his series by slapping LitRPG on the title and on the cover art and in the title for his Star Force series, which is perfectly a fine series. I think I read the first one because I remember seeing it in Audible. Like, oh, that's a nice cover. It wasn't for me, but he's one of those writers where he writes short stories and then later he'll collect them into larger stories and re-release them as an omnibus, and he'll make audiobooks of the larger ones, where I normally see him on my weekly Audible search for LitRPG stories. It's just that I'd never expected to see this here because it's like, 64th book in the series, and suddenly it's supposed to be LitRPG, and it's not. It really isn't. This has nothing to do with LitRPG. That's why I said it feels like it's kind of a marketing scheme. I'm not really sure why it's there, to be honest. The author has legitimate fans for a Star Force series, and I'm not saying his quality of writing is poor or anything. I'm just saying this isn't actually LitRPG, which bothers me in any way, shape, or form. So for me, it gets a 4 to 10. It's saying it's something that it's not. That's the review I give it. So that's Star Force LitRPG, Star Force Universe 64, with a score of 4 out of 10, because it's not actually LitRPG. And next we have Lord of Creation, The Universal Struggle, book number 1, written by Lawrence Blackwood. It is 317 pages, $2.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. And here's the author's description. When the thrilling lands of the RPG come to life for Donovan, monsters, dungeons, experience points, and leveling up, he is amazed. Never in his life could he have imagined the mysterious and exciting world that awaited him. After conquering a dungeon to rule for himself, though, things get real. Stronger and stronger enemies are arising, and the messenger from the underworld brings a horrifying notice. He and his dungeon are about to be brought to the underworld, where even his astonishing level is on the bottom of the totem pole. Then, just as soon as he thinks everything is going well, or at least as well as it can for somebody living in the underworld, he loses it all. But from the ashes, a new power burns through him. A power one of the most powerful titans have ever dreamed of wielding, the power of creation. But alas, nothing is as it seems anymore. All alone in the darkest places imaginable, can he survive? And I guess actually that describes a good 40, maybe 30, 40% of the novel. And honestly, that description is a lot better than the actual story. That's what it comes down to for me. Overall, this is just kind of a mess story for me. It feels like a serial story, or like this, I forget what it's called, like this stream of consciousness writing, or it's also called writing by the pantsing, I think it is for writers, where it's just like a story that's just written and it continues on, and there's not necessarily a formulated plot for this story. Just a bunch of stuff kind of happens, and it starts with this like XP grind. It moves into this dungeon master stuff, and then it goes to hell, like literally the underworld. Then there's like this real hard reset, and then some minor kingdom building, and eventually towards like the end of the story, there's an attempt in the novel. There's an attempt at a story with the villain, but by then I honestly didn't really care about anything. And most of the novel really is just stuff happening. There's the RPG mechanics. They exist. This is absolute LitRPG story. That's not in question. And they're decent. There's nothing like particularly super amazingly special about them, but there's nothing bad about them either. But it's just that all the connected pieces, just like there was no cohesion. There's no reason for them to be together other than the author thought it was going to be fun. And for him, maybe it really was. And from some readers, it may really be enjoyable. For me, it wasn't. I didn't see a reason to care about the main character. And while some of the individual ideas or pieces may have been interesting, it was hard to like want to continue because I didn't see a point or a place or goals other than just existing and fighting for itself. I was like, okay, it's one of those things about slice of life. It can go really well, and that's what this kind of is. It can go really well of just things happening when you have other things to care about, like the main character has a great background, or he has amazing goals, and that's something to care about, or great world building. And none of that just existed here. And that was just kind of sad and disappointing. And for me, it's just not entertaining at all. So, just kind of a mess story. Gets a score of 5 out of 10 for me. Lord of Creation, The Universal Struggle, book number 1. Again, not a bad story. There's no like technical writing problems as far as I recall. It just wasn't entertaining, even for me. And I really, I don't have super high boundaries to be entertained. But even for me, it's like, okay, this just wasn't, it was just kind of meh. So there you go. Score of 5 out of 10 for Lord of Creation, The Universal Struggle, book number 1. And next we have The Crafter, book number 1, Legacy, written by Outspan Foster. If you can't tell from that cover, it's written by Outspan Foster. It is 262 pages, $5.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. As a 10-year-old orphan, all Wick ever wanted was money, power, and well, what else was there? Even enough is never enough. His father's death left him with only a glass amulet, his trusty spade, and 2 level 1 skills. 6 months in the backwater city of Outlast, Wick has finally decided to make his move for a brighter future. It may cost him the beating of his life, but he lives by the Sprawler's code. The strong live long, but the bold get the gold. Follow Wick on the beginning of his new life as he explores new powers and manipulates anyone foolish enough to get in his way. The story does contain male lead, fast-paced, slightly overpowered protagonist, greedy protagonist, rite of passage, multiple magic and mystery. It does not contain harem, ultraviolence, horror, or a mopey protagonist. And those are all true statements. Those are all from the author. For me, I gotta say, man, this was a great story, and I'm gonna say that right from the beginning, so there's no confusion about it. This was probably one of the best stories I've read in about 5 or 6 months. Like, I think that I looked it up. The last time I gave a story an 8 out of 10, which is what I'm giving this one, was back in January. And I'm not just said that all the stories in between then have been bad. It's just that I like a lot of stuff. I give a lot of stuff like 7 out of 10 because everything for me is really entertaining and good. But fewer, though, are the stories that stand out as having that special whatever special quality is, that make it stand out. And this one definitely had that. I'm going to go into why. Up front, though, I'm going to say the story has some issues. The story, however, there's some small technical writing issues. When I first read this, though, I stayed up and read it almost in one sitting. I stayed up until 2 a.m. to read it. And as soon as I finished it, I wanted to read it again, which tells you just how much I enjoy this particular story. The issues in the story, though, are probably going to be fixed by the time most people read this or watch this review. One, there is not more crafting in this story. That's probably the biggest disappointment. When it says the Crafter Legacy, I'm thinking, oh, there's going to be some LitRPG crafting in here. And there's a little bit. The author has said in response to some of the reviews that comment on this, that there's going to be more crafting book 2 and for future. But this novel was mostly used to set up the world, the main character, his motivations, and that kind of stuff. And that's all happened, and that's fine. But still, I was disappointed that a novel called The Crafter wasn't more crafting, and that's perfectly okay. There are also a lot of technical writing errors in the version that I read. The author says in a little forward portion of this novel that he fully acknowledges that there are issues in that setting, but he wanted to get this novel out for fans who are excited to read the novel. He does plan to update it with a fully edited, finished, completely polished novel in July. But I'm reviewing this and reading it in June. So if you have an issue with those kind of things, if you can't get past like the technical writing issues, and there are quite a few, I counted, it came down about 1 every 3 paragraphs, where there was some technical writing issue, missing word, missing letter in a word, wrong tense, like present or past, or whatever, or plural and singular. If you can't get past that, just wait till July. You're going to have a much better time with this, I think, if you just wait a little bit. Structurally, the story reminded me of The Name of the Wind, and I think that might be one of the reasons I thought it was extra special, is because maybe because of the love I have for that particular series and that saga. But this author, this story also does a dual narrative of future main character and past main character. The future main character is total badass. And I thought it was really well done, the fact that future main character, even though you kind of see where he is in the future, being super powerful, well off, having his own goals, and knowing that he's alive, it didn't take away from the suspense and tension in the past main character storyline. And I think that's really challenging to do, because I found, in just my personal experience reading, that if you know the main character is going to be okay, a lot of times you don't feel the same set of tension of like, oh, he's not really going to die in this dungeon. He's not going to die in this fight. He's not going to, get murdered by whatever other character, right? But what the author did, I think this is really challenging to do, but Outspan did this. He made other consequences possible, even though he's alive in the future. That doesn't mean that the main character's goals and his aspirations and his designs aren't going to be set back, and that's kind of the tension that arises in the past main character story. And that was really nicely done. And like I said, I couldn't write that way. I'm super amateurish, so I can definitely appreciate how challenging that might have been for someone else. And I think that's one of the things that maybe just kicked it up a notch within that. There is this narrative challenge that I thought was really nicely done. In addition to that, though, there were some other just great things here. The world building it's really good. I'm a super fan of good, meaty lore and fleshed out cities and characters and histories and backstories, especially if you're incorporating the LitRPG mechanics into that lore and history, which is the case here. I really appreciated that. In addition to that, there is really good character development. What there isn't maybe is enough action. This isn't an action heavy story. There is action. There is some really nice action, but that's not all there is. This is not an action story. This is a lot of character development. There's a lot of good OP character stuff here. Good adventuring, good developing of the main character's personality, how power is shifting him and changing him, and how that it all happens. I don't want to spoil the story, but all that stuff is really well done. I think that's the big highlighting feature. The combat and the action is probably going to be something that's going to be increased as the story goes on, as the main character gets older. But still, there's just so much good storytelling here. I as soon as I finished it, I was like, man, I want to read this again. And if I had the time, I would have. I just have other, a list of stories to read them a mile long sometimes. On the game mechanics side, this is probably where things might fall apart a little bit for some readers. The game mechanics are pretty light. The story doesn't involve virtual reality or being transported to a game world at all. This is literally just set in a fantasy world where magic has been streamlined and everybody sees notifications for their skill sets. And again, these are enhanced skills, you're choosing which skill you're going to plug in to use for that day or for that whatever it is. And it's special powers, basically. And people have to gather mana or some other source of energy to unlock and upgrade those skills and fuel them. Skills can be found in dungeons or upgraded and then sold at a marketplace. There's a whole, like I said, there's a whole inherent system of like using these skill systems and using the RPG mechanics that are there. So this is absolutely LitRPG, even if it's lighter in the game mechanic side of things, it's fine. But because for me, it's woven so beautifully into the actual cultural relevance of the story. I was super okay with it, even though it's not super crunchy. You don't see a ton of numbers. The RPG stuff is important to the story, and you can't separate that from the narrative structure without it being a different kind of story. And to me, that's what LitRPG is. It doesn't have to be super crunchy necessarily to be important and to feel that RPG progression. There's absolutely power progression here that's really evident. And like I said, it's just not super crunchy. So that might be a thing for some people. For me, it wasn't. Just because, again, while I like super crunchy novels, this one absolutely made up for it with the great world building, with the great storytelling, and with those other like good elements. Like, I don't want to spoil the story for people. Like I said, I had a good time with that. I had a great time with it. So even though some people will be bothered by the technical writing errors, and I said just wait till July, go read it then when it's actually polished and finished. I'm sure the author will give you an update. I can't say enough good things about this. Like, this is truly it's a great story. I haven't read something that I'd enjoyed this much on so many levels in months and months and months long. Not that I didn't know anything else. I have a good time with a lot of stories, but this one just had a little something special for me. So for me, it gets a score of 8 out of 10. That's The Crafter, book number 1, Legacy, with the score of 8 out of 10. So definitely go check it out, man. Folks, ladies and gentlemen. And next up we have Kingdom Come, a LitRPG Dragonrider adventure, the Archemi Online Chronicles, book number 3, written by James Osiris Baldwin. I actually had a chance to meet James Baldwin once, and super awesome guy. Okay, this is 738 pages. That's right. I didn't mistakenly read that. 738 pages for $4.99. It's also available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. As a reward for stopping a serial killer and restoring the kingdom of Valachi to its rightful ruler, Dragozen Hector and his queen dragon, Karalti, have earned a noble title, a castle, and land of their own. There's only one problem. It's occupied by a freaking elder vampire. Not only has the vampire unleashed the blight of undeath across the land, but Hector's nemesis is on the warpath. His mission? To steal Karati, kill a god, and use their combined power to become the insane god Emperor of Archemi. Hector never wanted to go back to war, not even in a video game. But now he must fight to claim his territory from old Fangface before everything is taken from him. His dragon, his territory, and the woman he loves. Sorry. So there you go. That's the author's description. This is actually a really good continuation of the series. This series, as it has progressed, I've really been impressed by the author's ability to maintain and actually do more world expansion, world building, action, adventure, yet he still maintains the RPG progression that the readers expect. And that's always kind of challenging to do, especially as you get into like book 3 or 4 or 5 of the series. A lot of authors will scale back in one of those respects, and this author doesn't. So great on you, James Baldwin. Story-wise, this is just an entertaining story. Like each one of these novels has this particular vibe of like almost being separate kind of adventure stories. One was like an introduction. 2 was an expansion of the Dragonrider stuff. 3 is it's an expansion into like real-time strategy mechanics and also like a larger kind of group battling system, which I thought was kind of in addition to some more romantic character development stuff, which I don't want to spoil. And again, every novel kind of expands and sometimes in a different direction, and this is no different. So, but if you like books 1 and 2 in the series, I think you'll like book 3. I did. I should make you aware, though, that there is a sort of a shift in between these book series and that in book 3. There is some sexual content. It is skippable for the most part. However, it's right next to some very good character development. So I was like, personally, I skipped it, and I was like, oh wait, I can't skip this part because this is really important character development stuff for the Suri character. I was like, and then after I was like, oh no, I gotta skip this part again. So it's a little mixed in that aspect. But some people don't like sex in the stories at all. So if you skip it, you'll be okay. The story's gonna continue. It just won't have some of the plot lines won't have the same emotional if you do. So just an FYI. So for me, it's good stuff. Gets a score of 7.5 out of 10. Kingdom Come, a LitRPG Dragonrider adventure, the Archemi Online Chronicles, book number 3, with the score of 7.5 out of 10. It's the third book in the series. You're either kind of on board by now or you're not. And for me, I'm always an enjoyer of this writer's work. So there you go. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for hanging out with me today. Reading and reviewing the LitRPG stories that I enjoy and love, and talking about the stuff I really liked and the stuff I didn't as much. Remember, if you want to follow us and learn about all the LitRPG stuff that comes out every week, we're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon. We have a webpage where we collect all these reviews and put them up for people to browse through and peruse for their heart's content. And a bunch of other great links on our show notes for people where authors and readers and artists gather to talk about this genre. And if you want to support the podcast this week, remember that I'm a writer. I know it's hard to believe. And you can pick up our stuff. Project Alpha Book 2 is out as a pre-order. Book 1 in the series is out for free as of this recording up until July the 1st. I also have a fantasy series, which is Adventures on Terra. It's a 3-book series that's out there to read and enjoy. It's a fantasy LitRPG. And also something that's a little more sci-fi-ish, which is going to be Planet Bound, which I really love. I like the story. It's a lot of crafting in there. But it's definitely a little more, it's less crunchy, but also more crafty. So there you go. All kinds of fun things for you to support the podcast by purchasing those books, because I definitely funnel money from those novels into this podcast, in addition to the great support that we actually get from Patreon supporters and also just readers in general. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with me. Remember, until we can hang out again, to go read some LitRPG. Goodbye, everybody.